Okay, welcome everybody back to the Building Performance Hub podcast. This is episode number 5, and today's guest is Adam White. Now, Adam, many of you that will know, if you have LinkedIn ever, you'll know Adam from there because you're quite outspoken. You're quite forward with your product.
Quite purple.
Quite purple.
Quite purple.
I would say marketing. Your marketing is absolutely brilliant. So we're pleased to have you on. But before we do that, make sure that you do make sure you do subscribe. For those of you watching on YouTube, this is also available as an audio podcast. And for those of you watching, or those of you listening, this is also available on YouTube. You can watch us in the flesh. I don't know about you. Adam's a handsome man, but I'm getting on a bit.
I don't know. I think LinkedIn's getting a bit fed up on me now. So.
Make sure you do like and subscribe, and do the usual for the socials. But Adam, thanks for coming down. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule.
That's right.
It's good to have you down. Welcome. First question. You're massively into airtightness. How did you get into airtightness? So at some point in your career, you've left school?
Yep, I left school when I was 15. So I was going to be a plumber, and that lasted for about a week before they'd done some horrible stuff to me in that first week. And then I flipped to be a carpenter. And so at the age of 15, I'd left school, and I was going into London to be a carpenter.
So you worked on site then for a good few years, just out. Was that your kind of teenage years, as it were?
That was it. Just it's a bit different now. So at 15, I had a fake ID that said I was 21. So at 16, I was going to Ibiza and all of that sort of stuff. So we had a good work-life balance. A bit different to nowadays. I used to leave the house at 4:30 in the morning, even at 16 years old, 4:30, getting at 7:30 at night. The rules were a bit different on apprentices then.
Yeah.
So we used to get beasted a bit more, but I always say I used to hate my boss. Oh my God, he was a horrible bastard. He was just insanely horrible to me, but he made me the person I am today. And as much as I hate to say it, them first 3 years I had with him, even though I left him after 3 years, when I went to site after 3 years, I went to site and I was the first one there and I was the last one there. And I was like, well, where are they all going? Why are they chipping off at like 2, 3 o'clock? And I was still there 5, 6 o'clock at night because I was on price work. I was earning the money. That's what he'd instilled into me. And that is what I've carried on through my industry life. And
interesting.
It brings me up to running my own timber frame company, going into doing the installs of timber frame, where I first encountered the airtightness.
Yeah. So just before that, so you were a carpenter. You're out on sites, and is that what happened? Were you working for somebody else when you first encountered it, or had you got involved with doing your own?
I was doing my own install, so I had a small team. There was like 3 of us. Sometimes 4 of us, doing installs for different companies, Taylor Lane, Innovari Systems, people like that. And then it was this one site, which was in Cambridge, and it was, I don't know, maybe 200 houses all out of block work, and this little lonely timber frame building in the corner. It's for Skanska. It was one of their first ones. It was this eco build that we were doing. And we started doing it, and the site manager come up to me and said, "Oh, do you know anything about airtightness?" I was like, "Yeah, I know about airtightness." I didn't have an absolute clue what it was.
What was this, like 2006 or something? When it just came in, or
this was
just before that?
This was only 18 years ago, 17 years ago. This was a long, long time ago. And bear in mind, timber framers, we all can throw our hands up. We did do a little bit of papering, but not a lot. But if we did, we never taped it. We just threw it on, shot the bands through it.
Yeah, and
all of that.
By papering, you mean you're installing the membrane, what we would now call a membrane, but back then it was just thought about as humidity. It was stopping
moisture,
just moisture control.
Yeah, that was it.
So it wasn't as important. We weren't worried about airtightness. Was still in the science. I mean, even 20 years ago, airtightness was still in the scientific community, still becoming, finding out about it and how much moisture gets into buildings through airtightness. It's something we don't discuss enough about, actually, moisture in buildings. But So you'd already been doing a little bit, and someone said to you, "Let's do a bit of airtightness."
Yeah, can you do it? So I went home, researched it, and I was like, yeah, I can do it, and I can buy the materials, I can make this building airtight, which I did, and then he said, oh, do you know how to do air testing? I was like, of course I do.
Yeah.
Literally, I didn't even have a Scooby what airtight. You can't ride it how it played out. So I got on the phone and I said to a few local companies, look, can you come in, do an air test on this building and do it white label? So if I give you a high vis, come in under me, even though the cert will be through you, but you work for me. So yeah, they agreed. Bear in mind, back then we were getting anywhere from £400 to £800 for an air test.
Oh, I remember the days.
So they were the good old days.
I remember the good days.
And I also, the second day, I rang up a company, Stromer, and I booked me and one other in to be qualified air testers.
Yeah.
So yeah, in the space of like 2 months, I had 2 qualified air testers in my team, and we'd done this air test, and then I had the whole other 200 homes at £400 to £800 a test, depending on how hard it was.
And there's a little fact there, gentlemen. Our colleague, Mr. Paul Carling himself, was the one that did the training for Adam back in the day, which is it's a nice kind of link that all those years ago our journeys kind of run parallel. That you'd been trained in ATMA has existed in some form or another, and then you've existed in a parallel universe, which is quite cool.
He's still a cantankerous bugger, but he's good. He's very, very on the ball. He's full, and he won't mind me saying it either, because he's devil in the detail. That man.
His brain works differently to everybody else. And I'm sure again he won't mind me saying that.
It was actually his house.
The way he thinks about things is just outside the box, and even now, as the ATMA technical manager, it's just it's so good to have him on board and be able to do the things he does. Fantastic. To make sure. One of those things as ATMA members, I don't think there's a lot of people that phone Paul on a weekly basis, but there's a lot of members that just don't use that knowledge that's inside there, and he's sitting at the other end of the phone ready to be spoken to at any point. So do use that, do take advantage of Paul. But sorry,
well, it was his house we actually air tested as well, so I actually air tested his house.
It's probably the most air tested house in the country.
Honestly, it was just mad. I see him now and it's just like, God. It's just crazy how life's gone from, full circle. We're now doing business again together in one way or another.
Yeah.
So that was how I started. And then I actually opened up an air testing company as well. So to finish off doing them 200 homes, I actually opened up an air testing company. So we've done hundreds and thousands of tests.
Yeah, we must have competed at some point back in the good old days.
Yeah.
When I was back then it was called Chiltern Dynamics. We had a branch off of a branch off of a branch of a company, and we were doing a lot of testing. That was my introduction. I'm sure many of you have spoken about it in a bit of detail already. So, what's really interesting? You've done airtightness, you've done timber frame, you've got your own timber frame company. Suddenly you're out there taking advantage of what I always refer to as the good old days. And for my American friends, that's we were charging $1,000 per test. They probably still are charging about that. There'll be people shouting at me saying "shut up" from over the pond. But for us now, an average air test for a single plot could be less than £200, about $250. And if you're stacking them up and selling them cheap, you could end up doing 5, 6, 7 tests for £250, $300. It's depending on the customer. So the times have changed because air testing in this country has just become so ingrained as part of the regs. We air test every single building. So it's, I guess you took advantage of that as more and more air tests came in, the prices came down, competition changed. You had to find a new niche. It
was a hard market. I make no hidden secret that the air testing industry back then was, yes, it was good, it was coming in, but it wasn't all roses. Every industry has its issues, but it did get to a stage where the amount of companies that tried to bribe you to get these air tests, and it's something that a lot of people don't like talking about, and I actually closed my company one afternoon because someone rang me up screaming and shouting at me. And I've been offered bribes before. Don't take them because obviously it's a conflict of interest as well.
Yeah.
And they offered me, it was 150 homes, they were going to pay me 150 in air test, and they wanted all the certs that day. And he was screaming at me, just do it, it's only a air test. And I was like, that's a lot of money. If they offer that to one of my guys, now I know my guys wouldn't do it, but everyone has a limit. There's always a limit to everyone.
Everyone has a price, yeah. I remember the most I've ever been offered, it's a funny story. It wasn't air testing. I've never ever been offered a bribe for an air test, and I've done thousands of other things. The only bribe I've ever been offered was for sound testing. There was a company I tested for. It was up on the northeast coast. It was a long old drive. It must have been 4 or 5 hours, maybe 6 hours to get there. And I had to do a bunch of sound testing. They'd taken, I'm sure it was 12 houses and divided it into 24 flats. So we had to do 3 sets of tests. So it was a long day. But they hadn't done any acoustic detailing. They'd just put plasterboard on the underside of the joists, standard chipboard above. These things were failing by a country mile. And one of the, kind of halfway through the testing, a site manager came up to me and tapped on the window, which, as any sound testers know out there, infuriating when you're in a mid-measurement. And he rubbed 2 dirty £5 notes together. They weren't even fresh, crisp £5 notes. 2 dirty £5 notes together in order to offer me a bribe. £10. I mean, the site would have needed a couple of £100,000 worth of work. It needed drop ceilings. It needed the floors being lifted and changed. It needed joists being extended. It was a mess. But £10 was the most I was ever offered. Isn't that mad? I know one of the guys that used to work for me was offered, I think it was something crazy, 25,000 or something, suitcase full of cash to pass an air test, and he turned it down. And that's integrity. 25 grand in a suitcase to walk away for what you say. Sometimes the contractors, particularly in the early days, it's just an air test. What does it matter? Well, it actually matters quite a lot because we size our heating systems, we decide the insulation, we do a lot of stuff based on that air tightness value. So it does matter.
It matters.
Turned down 25 grand
a lot.
was
25
awesome.
grand.
Yeah.
Never that sort of amount. I mean, I was offered some sizable figures, and I remember turning a few down and then turning up to the same properties, and big roof lights not in, and they've been air tested. I'm looking up and they're all open. Yeah. I'm like, well, we know someone took a bribe there.
Have you? I guess I should say with my ATMA hat on, if you do come across that, if you do find those types of tests, we actively kick people out of the industry. We probably remove, and not always for doing stuff like that, but we generally remove 6 to 10 air testers a year from our scheme. We proudly give them the boot because we don't want that in ATMA. That's not what we represent. So we get rid of the bad testers and anyone clearly taking bribes. We get rid of them pretty damn quickly. So if you have any of those issues, you just email them to me, manager@atma.org. Most of you know my email address. I want to hear about it because if I find them and they have done that, they are out of the system. So at least we keep we're doing our bit to keep it clean.
I think you need to as well. I mean, this is where the builders themselves need to understand that it's an ever-changing market. Now, you might be able to fudge this air test now, but when the homeowners are moving in and feeling cold, a lot of their reaction is, well, I need to find out why now. And then, so people are then coming in and retesting. So the builders are finding themselves not a lot of wiggle room to say, yeah, that was hitting a 1, but now it's hitting a 10.
Yeah.
How was that possible?
Yeah,
a building moved. Well, your product should move with a building.
And there is a lot of legal cases that are going through the system where that is the case. And sometimes there is builder movement. There's a good report that was published on the AIVC that says 10 to 15% reduction is about normal. Just as buildings dry out, you get gaps and cracks, silicon sealants and corks that we really shouldn't be using as part of our airtight barrier. They dry out and you get bits of leakage there. It is generally around about 10 to 15%, so we accept that. But we've seen them where 35, 40, 50% different. Absolutely not. That's that's something that's been done at the time of test and is going to get you in a world of trouble. And I think one of the hardest things we have to do sometimes is remove people's licenses and say, I'm sorry, you're gone. That's your job over. Your employer can still keep you on, but we are not going to certify you. Anyone ever asked me what's the hardest part of my job? It's telling someone they're effectively unemployed is the hardest part of my job. So we do it. We don't like to do it, but we will do it if needs be.
Yeah, sometimes that's a bit harsh, because it is harsh, but then where's it come from? Sometimes it comes from upper management, and they're cannon fodder in that type of thing.
They absolutely can be, and we have had examples of that. We've kicked out entire companies before because the instruction has come from the top. We find out a tester has done bad, and a tester has fudged a test. However way, there's loads of ways of doing it. We don't pretend that it's not easy to do, but then we've taken out the entire company because we've seen written instruction from the top telling them to do it. So everybody loses their jobs. So it is a two-way street, as you point out. But on a slightly more positive note.
Yeah, there is always positive things.
Slightly more positive note. Let's talk about passive purple, because my LinkedIn, as I mentioned early doors, is purple. Every time I open it, I'm seeing purple walls, I'm seeing purple floors, I'm seeing purple ceilings, I'm seeing everything purple. Where on earth did that come from, and why purple? It's a big question. Start right from the beginning, because I want to know, this is because it's such a cool product. We'll talk about the products, but I want to know why where did it start, and why purple?
It started, I had a nightmare job. And I used paper membranes, and the electricians come in and whatever, and then it was just, I was like, no, like they're doing the air tests and you could see all the smoke pouring through. Like, there's got to be a better way. And then just found someone who then managed to make it for me. It was black to start with. Black's not a good selling point.
It doesn't look good inside a dark building, does it?
Here's a big black building.
Here's a building that looks like it's been on fire.
I once had a customer and she was like, can you not paint it? Because I'm like, it's getting covered. Yeah, but I don't like the look of it. Even though it's getting covered up. And then we run an online thing, actually on LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn, by the way.
Yeah,
you probably know it's a great marketing tool because it's free. And we had sunshine yellow. We had.
Did you set a poll or something?
Yeah, we set a poll up.
No way. That was how you decided.
That's how we done it. Yeah. So it was passive purple, sunshine yellow, eco green, and there was something blue. It was something really corny, sunshine blue. I don't know.
Sea blue or something.
Something like that.
Ocean.
And literally, it was like 50,000. It was just, it went off. Everyone just said passive purple, because I think it just rolled off the tongue.
Yeah, what do you call it? The alliteration, not alliteration.
And then you could see passive purple as well. And it's the only colour you can really see.
It's a colour you don't get in construction. I guess that's what makes it stand out. Nobody has. I mean, you get blue plasterboard. You get maybe you don't get much yellow. A lot of walls get painted a magnolia yellowy colour, I guess. So purple is just a colour that doesn't ever get used in construction. I guess that's why when you paint the stuff on,
you can see the gaps.
Yeah,
even if
you must have.
I've
I've seen some pictures where you've painted, 4-story, 5-story buildings purple. That must freak some people out.
Because the councils always get complaints.
Yeah, I can imagine. Like, I love my wife, but if the neighbouring property mid-construction painted their house purple, she would have a meltdown. And I can only imagine you must have had some of that.
That's why I love doing jobs in London. I love it. When you've got a block of, say, 5 houses and they all go purple, or retrofit's great, or timber frame. And then, everyone complains to the council, oh my God, all these purple buildings, oh my God. But it's good advertising. Yeah,
and it is a great way of advertising. But so what does passive purple do? So we see it, and we kind of understand it makes stuff airtight. We're making buildings airtight, but it's a bit more intelligent than that, I guess.
It's moisture management.
How does paint manage moisture? How on earth can paint change?
Well, it changes how humidity goes up. So, I mean, when we talk about breathability, and this is the thing that everything's breathable at a set point when you rise humidity. So this table's breathable. The stuff we're wearing is breathable. But to what level? So when we put these airtight membranes on the inside of the building, it's moisture management. But effectively, we want to stop any moisture from the inside going through that wall. The only time we want it to happen is if humidity gets too high, which then it will allow some moisture through. So it's like the bouncer on your fabric of your building. So passive purple, the original one, goes on the warm side of the insulation because we want the warm, moist air to stay away from the cold. That's the name of the game. So we want to keep all of that moisture inside, all the air inside, and then we've got the ventilation systems in the house that will deal with all that moisture and air that's in there.
Yeah. Interesting. So does it physically change then? So it controls the humidity. Does it open up?
It will open up. It will open up. That's why we call ourselves intelligent membranes, because if it goes up past a set humidity, it will open up. And so if there's five people on one side, and there's none on this side, and there's too many, well, go on, 2 people go over.
Yeah, absolutely fascinating how something can do that. And we'll show people, those of you watching the video podcast, we have a wall here at the Building Performance Hub that you painted purple, which was always quite fun, and it's always a talking point because we have this wonderful colour scheme where everything is anthracite and oak. We generally anthracite and oak everywhere we go, and then for those of you that have seen on this side, there is a full-blown purple wall, and it is such a talking point. People want to touch it and see, and they ask questions about it all the time. So those of you watching a video podcast will quickly flick to a nice shot of that, but it's a really cool product. So passive purple is flying off the shelves. I guess it'd be remiss of me not to let you. Where can I buy it?
Intelligentmembranes.com. But if you go to all the major retailers now,
we should get it on the Building Performance Hub website. I think we should.
We should do. But obviously, passive purple is just one of that was my original baby, and then we've got passive purple external, which is our vapor open, so our breathable membrane, which goes on the outside of facades.
Yeah.
Airtight.
Because you want the moisture in the blocks, I guess, to be able to escape. You don't want it coming inside the property. You want it to be able to escape.
You want it to be able to escape, yeah. So facade membranes, which we normally say breathable membranes, they're vapor open. So let the moisture out, but waterproof.
Yeah.
Because again, it's all part of a system. So when anyone's building a house, the first thing, or retrofit, I always say ventilation. Ventilation, we're part of a system. You've got the ventilation, you've got your passive purple, and then you've got your facade membrane. So now this can be either your insulation. If you can get an insulation completely airtight and weathertight, I'd be amazed. Some people say they can, but so we want to keep that wall system. We want the weathertight and airtight, and the inside airtight away from each other. The warm and the cold air away, and it protects the U value.
All I can think about as you're saying that is we do a lot of work in America. We have an office in Australia, and we do a bit of work in the Middle East, where quite often that whole system is flipped. So as we describe, we want our air barrier on the inside because we want the humidity to travel from inside to out. Quite often in warm climates, it can be the other way around, depending on the system. But I guess you talking about the system is incredibly important because it's something that we are seeing a breakdown of recently, I think, in the construction industry is looking at products and thinking they work together. And we need to look at our external wall systems as an entire system. We can't just paint everything purple and not understand the impacts of what might be going on the other side of the wall.
Every product, if someone comes to you and say, this is it, and this is the solution, it solves all the problems, they're lying, basically. Because everything's a system. You have to have your condensation risk analysis. You have to have your WUFI calculations. You have to do these things now. You can't just go, oh, well, 30 years ago, me and Dave put this on here and we've done some blocks and we put a bit of insulation in with gaps in it and it's always been good.
Yeah.
Well, no, it hasn't always been good. That's why we have to retrofit all the buildings we used to do. So Absolutely. Everything needs rechecking. That's what frustrates me a lot about building controls. And they're still dragging the old narrative along with them and accepting it. And then us new guys are coming in.
Yeah, building control is very much a two-way street, because you need the experience of people to be able to spot problems that have been doing it a long time. But on the flip side, you have this younger generation of building control comes through that learn the new systems. And I think there's, at least in my experience, there's a bit of a gap in the middle where you have the new way of doing it and the old way of doing it, and they can sometimes clash. And we need to be very conscious of that. I think Wi-Fi is something cool. I went on tour in Australia with one of the guys that invented Wi-Fi, German doctor, might be professor, I forget his name, but we'll put a link there.
He's based in Austin, isn't he? Texas?
Did he go to Texas?
He
was in Australia with us. Absolutely lovely guy. We did a full tour of Australia with Sean Maxwell, who's our Australian Atmos ski manager. That was super cool. But these Wi-Fi analysis are just absolutely incredible. But it's something I'm very concerned for the retrofit industry, that we are going to create a generation of bad buildings again if we are not looking at the whole picture. If we
100%.
I mean, I've been
get me
fighting with people on LinkedIn recently. Those of you that are really interested can search for it, because the way we think about ventilation, moisture, airtightness, and fundamental building product is going wrong. And retrofit and past 2030, 2035 is kind of meant to be a bit of a panacea to say this is gonna fix things. This is how it should be done. And what I've become very frustrated with is that we've already got approved methods that allow you to bypass chunks of past 2030, 2035, and people signing that off. That is going to go horribly wrong, because we can't ignore things like ventilation, particularly ventilation. We can't allow people to say, just because this room isn't airtight, that it has enough ventilation. Those two words, infiltration or airtightness and ventilation, are so far removed. For some reason, we use meters cubed per hour generally in the UK. It's CFM everywhere else, cubic feet a minute. Because we use the same numbers or the same system, people confuse the two. So you can have an air leakage rate of 500 meters cubed an hour, but your ventilation might be recorded as 16 meters cubed an hour. Because they're using the same metric, we're confusing the two things as being one and the same. And it is my pet hate when people say, oh, don't worry, the building's leaky enough and therefore we don't need to introduce ventilation. Absolutely not. If you have that mindset, if you think that that's okay, it is just not okay. We need to, as an industry, we're better than that. We're making these homes super airtight. We're testing them and saying, oh, don't worry, it leaks. I'll bore people one day. I'm going to do a video. Actually, I'm going to do a 20-minute ranting video about it with my whiteboard, and explain to people how in the autumn and the spring there is zero air movement in buildings. You don't have stack effect and you don't have external pressures on your buildings, then you don't have ventilation, even if you have a big hole in your building.
You don't know where the holes are. That's my problem. You don't know where the holes are.
Somebody can move in and put a carpet down where the holes are, where you've measured your infiltration. It might be through the floor. So if you then put a carpet down that's thickly woven, you're going to substantially reduce your air leakage and then drop yourself straight into the point where you need to have better ventilation.
But what a stupid way of looking at things. Well,
Yeah,
and I hate to go in on it because
deal with the problem.
If you've got cold air coming in from places you don't know, hold up. So we've got cold air meeting warm air. What's happening in all these houses?
What could possibly go wrong?
It's mould.
Yeah.
Oh no, yeah, no. But we've got natural ventilation. No, there's nothing natural about natural ventilation. And then people also confuse airtightness with having, and this is an airtight building doesn't mean an efficient building either.
Yeah.
Even if you could go, oh, it's leaky and we're going to go into this retrofit and we're going to do this bit of mastic and do that. That's not eco, because what you're doing is you're creating a box within a box. So all your U values and all the stuff you're doing outside is irrelevant because you've now created another box. So if you're using a plasterboard line and doing all your mastics, all the cold air's getting behind the plasterboard. Oh, and that's going to cause mould as well. And it can travel around the inside of your house.
Yeah.
It's madness how we look at it. And I always say before you put passive purple on or anyone's products, it's got to be ventilation first.
Yeah, I'm the first person that will turn around and say, bearing in mind I've done airtightness. I'm the ski manager for Atmo. I'm the first person to say, do not build an airtight home if you're not going to ventilate it properly, and not fudging it and not assuming infiltration. Infiltration is about protecting the building fabric. It's about moisture management. It's about mold management. You're there to protect the fabric of the building. Yes, there are some energy efficiency gains, and the reports from Energy House 2.0, which I look up to a lot, came out recently. I've got an article that is out now, and you can see it on the Apple website, where I look at the reports and discuss it in detail about the energy savings are X, but actually the moisture risks are Y, and we need to think a substantial amount more about airtightness and moisture, and stop trying to bypass with crappy ventilation systems, because any of you know from Australia and New Zealand, they have the pink bat syndrome. Every nation seems to have had this issue where they've put something in and it's gone wrong, and that's what makes governments very nervous to make big changes. It's pretty straightforward. You need to build airtight, you need to ventilate right, you need to insulate correctly, and you need to make sure that all of those systems work so that you can manage a building system. And I don't know how and why we seem to get that wrong so often. And as I said right at the very beginning, before my rant started, how are we getting this so wrong in retrofit? Because we're already seeing mouldy homes pop up in retrofit. We're already seeing homes that are being wrapped in insulation, they're having the windows changed, but rather than say, right, we don't need to do any upgrades to the ventilation system because we've done a bit of infiltration testing. I don't understand how we're taking it from there to then not thinking, hang on, if you change the level of insulation and if you change the U value of the glazing, you've actually changed the dew point in that wall build-up. And by changing the dew point of the wall build-up, you then affect the humidity inside the house. If you affect the humidity inside the house and your humidity increases, you then have a moisture problem. So you don't have to worry about air leakage and air tightness being a thing. If you change the dew values of your wall and floor and roof build-ups, you create a change in the humidity inside the house, and that's going to create mold. We have to fix ventilation first.
I'm 100%. I always, I get into arguments with people when they say, oh, well, we're doing extract only. And I've got extract only from the bathrooms and the kitchens. It can't work. Because where are you taking that air from? Oh, we get it from the trickle vents, and we make some extra big holes in the living room. Well, as a homeowner, I'm going to go, I've got -5 coming in from that hole. I'm freezing.
Yeah.
So I'm going to block it off.
Yeah, I'm going to close that trickle vent. I'm going to close the freezing cold wall vent. And then one of two things happens. Your ventilation system pulls no air, because here's what people don't understand. Air that gets taken out has to be replaced. It's the fundamentals of insulation. Air is removed and air is replaced, because we don't live in a vacuum. We don't live where there's less air inside to out. Mm-hmm. So air has to come in, and when people say air comes in through trickle vents, air will come in where the bloody hell it wants to come in. There is no doubt in that. So if air wants to come in at the bottom of your wall build-up, or if air wants to come in from between your floorboards,
your nice, warm, moist air coming in.
That lovely air underneath your floor, air will come in from wherever it wants to. So the solution is, we all know what the solution is. We need to fit MVHR systems, because we can have complete control over the out and the in. On top of an MVHR system, we have moisture management. We can also have a little bit of heat management. We can also chuck in a CO2 sensor or two and make sure that we're looking after the indoor air quality. We can have PM 2.5 sensors. But these things are seen as a massive expense, and we need to get over the fact that things are expensive. If you drive a nice car, I've seen it on LinkedIn recently, what looks like spray painted.
Oh, yeah, I sprayed.
To show off for your
I sprayed my window protection.
Sprayed your window protection and spray painted. Was it your kids? You spray painted over the car?
They're my apprentices, so yeah, they are my kids. Yeah,
yeah.
They are basically.
Spray painted over your car to show your protection. Excuse me. So it's just absolutely. I've lost my train of thought a little bit, but we need to do better as an industry. Completely lost my train of thought.
We do need to do better, and
but it's not a big change. This is the thing. It's not. We're not talking fundamentally change all of building science. It was MVHR I was talking about. We're not talking all of building science. I think if the point, that's it, I'm back on track. You drive a nice car. If you took your car, drove your car, and you had mould that grew in the passenger footwell, you would be back at the manufacturer within seconds. Oh my God, I'd be back. There's mould. I'm breathing that in. That's disgusting. You wouldn't accept it. You buy a £500,000 house in a lovely rural area of Cambridge. Probably doesn't buy your house in Cambridgeshire.
Maybe a flat.
Yeah, but you buy it and you get mould. You kind of, the senses are, you wipe it off. It's not really a problem. That's absolutely bonkers to me. That you could spend substantial amount of your income. You know, people, it's not uncommon to spend 50% of your income on a mortgage to buy a house.
Yeah.
And we accept that. We go, oh, because we don't know about it, or it's a bit cloak and dagger, we accept poor. And I think we need to do better. We don't do it with our cars. You don't buy a kettle or a toaster and have it catch fire or do weird things or smell or grow mold in your kettle or your toaster. You just wouldn't accept it. So you'd be back on taking your kettle or your toaster back to the middle aisle of Aldi quicker than you could find the receipt. So with our homes, the homeowner needs to be a bit better educated. But if the homeowner isn't educated and or they're drying clothes inside, the classic, they're not opening the windows enough, then we know that there's a problem that can be fixed in advance. We just put an MVHR system in. They turn an MVHR system off, that's for whole different reasons, whole different ballgame. But we know that people need to dry clothes indoors. We know the British climate for about 9 months of the year isn't good enough to dry your clothes outside.
Maybe 11 months.
Yeah, so
11.
We've got the option, we've got the ability to put some of this stuff in to ventilate buildings properly.
Yeah, and I do worry for a lot of these councils that are spending huge chunks of money, anywhere 50, 60, 70, 80, 100, 130 grand for these retrofits. Say 60,000, they're not putting ventilation in. So you're upgrading all the insulation, then you're giving them a load of heat that they've never had in that building. And it's just going to be mould city.
Yeah, I was speaking to someone recently from Hounslow Council, and they're planning on doing a substantial retrofit. I mean, thousands of homes. And I said to him, who's on your committee? Who's on your building science committee? And we don't have a building science committee. And so why not? There's a bunch of people that probably would do it for free, that would happily be on your building science committee, that would talk to you about, moisture management, heat pump sizes, acoustics. There's all of these things that people need to take a little look. Spend 5 minutes in a room with you and I, and we'll go, what are you doing about airtightness? What are you doing about ventilation?
It's getting the truth. It's getting the truth.
Getting the
not
truth
just selling your product.
Yes.
Even ventilation companies, I always say they've got to go in first, but making sure they're telling everyone all the facts. Even ventilation is just the start of the story. They can't say stick ours in, it's fixed. But then you have to go to airtightness and insulation. Yeah,
and I'm a big fan of, whenever I spec'd anything, whenever I was trading as an acoustic consultant, I used to never give brand names. I used to always say, here is the spec. I need 27 litres a second, and I need it at no greater than 29 dB or 29 dBA inside the property at 1 metre. That's the spec that you need to hit. I don't care whose system you buy, but that's the spec. So you figure it out. And I think we need, as building scientists, it's why they need independence. You need independent building scientists who aren't affiliated to any companies to come along and say, let's have a quick assessment. There's loads of them out there who would happily look at a project and go, what are you doing about, let's tick it off, let's go one by one, let's start with ventilation, let's look at what are you doing for air tightness? You're not doing air tightness. Okay, right, well then, here is you're going to have an increased risk here. What are you doing about heating? Okay, we're changing to heat pumps, great. What are you doing about solar panels? You putting solar panels on, fantastic. But what are you doing about?
I don't want to hear about solar panels. Jesus.
Or is that a trigger word?
Well, it's just that's the first thing. I'm doing a retrofit. I'm putting solar panels on. I don't care. I don't care. What's the ventilation and what's the that's the last thing that goes on a house. It 100% is. And another thing, it's like, what's the return on investment? It's not the return on investment. It's return on health. It's the same with passive house. A lot of people say, oh, it's return on investment and this and. No, it's return on health. What are your health benefits from living in a healthy building? Like breathing fresh air in that's not mouldy and got radon in. And
there was a report that was published that showed for every pound spent on building quality or retrofit in the right areas, it saved the NHS, was it 40p or 45p? Which is absolutely insane. We want to talk about reducing the strain on NHS. Let's talk about where we spend anywhere between 8 and 16 hours a day, depending on who you are, what you do. Some people spend nearly 24 hours a day in their homes. They maybe walk the dog.
COVID, it's made everyone work from home as well. So
Yeah.
we're actually using our homes a lot more than we used to.
So if the air quality isn't right, then it's going to be a problem.
Yeah, 100%.
Cool. Okay. Right.
That sounded like a 20, 30-minute rant.
No, but this is what the people want to hear. This is exactly what we
everything's
do.
not always sunshine and lollipops, and definitely with a retrofit market at the minute.
My end 3 questions. So whenever we do a podcast, I always ask people the same end 3 questions. And it gives us a level of the people in the industry. So question number 1, and you can answer this as honestly as you want to.
Oh, God.
These aren't bad. If you could change one thing right now in the construction industry, what would it be and why?
One thing, I would make it compulsory that there had to be an air test and thermal test, imagery, 1 year after someone moved into a home.
Oh, I like it.
1 year, and it gets compulsory, and it has to be some sort of independent government body.
Yeah.
And 100%.
I like that.
Because
I like the Swedish approach. So forgive me if it's not the Swedes, but if it is, tell me a bit more about it. Where you don't get an energy performance certificate until a year after you've lived in the building, so you need a year of data. So I know the guys similar, like the guys at Build Test Solutions, and there's some others doing HTC monitoring. You should not get an energy performance certificate until you've had a year's worth of data in that house.
100%.
And because only then do you know your true energy usage. Because you may get an EPC rating of a D, but actually it's a B. I know there's occupancy stuff related to that, and I gather. And the guys at Energy House 2.0 have done fantastic work there, along with the universities associated with them, about occupancy assumptions and how to better make assumptions in those energy models. But I think you shouldn't get an EPC until then. And I think if you're buying a house, a second-hand house, for want of a better term, a house that's already been lived in, it should be a legal requirement to disclose the actual energy that's been used over the last however many years through the build. It should be a public thing. I think
well, yeah, because it's fundamental to their income, their wages, how they live. Because if they're moving in and they've allowed, say, £100 a month for energy, and actually it's 250, that's a big difference.
It is.
Money's tight now for all of us.
Exactly. Okay, good answer. I like that. Question number 2. Who is inspiring you right now? That could be anyone. That could be family, friends, business. Who's inspiring you?
Who's inspiring me? God, that's a good question. That is a good question.
Can come back to it if you want.
Yeah, come back to it.
So the last question, before we come back to the second question. Tell me something you'd have done differently in your career if you could do it all again.
I'll become a bricklayer. every day of the week. Become a bricklayer. Get my level. Go in at 8:30 in the morning with a cup of tea. Tell everyone they're a bunch of whatever, and then leave at 2 o'clock and earn £400 or £500 a day.
Yeah.
Job done, mate. 100%. And I think all the industry, I love bricklayers. And about bloody time they got their money. I do agree with that. About bloody time. It's back-breaking work. Not a lot of people wanted to do it. I was told when I was young, so not a lot of people know I'm dyslexic. They said, you could be a bricklayer or plasterer, because back then we didn't really know.
Yeah.
But now look at them. Bricklayers are running the show. They're
running
running the show, earning the money, and damn right they should do as well, because the hard graft, and I can do it. So, bricklayer.
Bricklayer, that's brilliant. But it also leads on to a whole nother conversation we could have at some point. And it'd be good to see if I can get a teacher on board and discuss with a qualified teacher about why universities still push so hard on students, and the construction industry is seen as such a negative thing. So I do quite a lot of talks in some of the local schools here,
Okay.
and I try and inspire people into construction. One of the first things I do when I walk out on the stage, there'd be 400 kids sitting, and I take off my hard hat, I take off my high vis, I put the two together, and I kick my hard hat across the other side of the stage. And we talk about construction being an iceberg. So construction, the bit you see on construction, the bricklayers, some of the plasterers, the people in the high vis jackets sitting in a site office, is 10% of construction. Below that, you have energy modelers, architects, you have people that work for utilities, you have planning departments, you have building control, you have so many people that you don't see for a building to go up. Surveyors, I mean, I could go on for ages. But all people tend to see is the trades where you've got muddy boots and a high vis jacket and you're working it's -5 outside. Except bricklayers, they don't work at -5.
Or when it rains.
Or
Or if it's cloudy.
Or it's cloudy. Yeah, or if it's Tuesday.
Yeah.
So, I'd be fascinated to know why we still have this thing. And we talk about T levels, not good enough. Construction is the second highest earning income for.
We don't make
this
it
country.
sexy enough.
Banking, construction.
We don't make it sexy enough. We don't make it that people want to do it. So I'm doing a great thing, a collab with Waltham Forest College at the minute. So we're doing them a training hub. That's whoa. A training, a bit different to this. So this is basically showing the students from a builder's perspective. So it's from my perspective on what net zero passive house is, and just giving them a feel for what it is, and just showing them, because they see everyone, and it's the same with net zero passive house. Everyone seems to think passive house and net zero is just about these nerdy people that love U values and all of that sort of stuff, and G values on windows, and it's not. We don't. The builders don't care. They want to get a window and fit it correctly, and do a good job.
Absolutely.
And get paid a good amount of money for doing it. And that's what we want to show at the college, like how to fit windows wrong, how to fit them right. Just show them they can do it, and you don't need to work a U value of a window out. I always said to my guys, if you ever work a U value of a window out, you're fired. Because I'm not going to get sued.
That's not what you do.
Yeah, the window manufacturer will work that out, and then if they get it wrong, then it's down on them. So that information is useless. Let's just get our hands dirty.
Yeah, I completely agree. There's people that do that. There's people that love to do that, U values. I think there's nothing sexier than a building that has 0 energy bills. How cool is it to be able to say to your neighbour, I don't pay a penny?
I think you need to get out a bit more, Barry.
Yeah. Right, I'm not going to let you off the hook. Question number 2, who's inspiring you?
Do you know what? There's loads of people to follow. Everyone will, but I like controversial people. I like seeing people rile people up. You're the same as me. I like the controversy. I love Elon Musk. I love the way he just rules it all, and he just does him. And not a lot of people do that in this world. You can agree with some of the stuff he says, and you don't. It's the same as the Donald Trump thing. You can agree with some stuff, hate him for a lot of stuff, but yeah.
So those kind of leaders that are out there doing their own thing, I guess is.
I'm neither one way or the other. So I always try and stay in the middle. I just like going on the side that annoys the other person the most, really, to be fair.
Cool.
But yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks so much for coming down. And thanks for being on
pleasure.
the Building Performance Hub podcast. As always, like and subscribe. Follow us. We're on YouTube, Amazon, Spotify. Follow us on all of those, because that keeps all of us in jobs. And comment below as well who you'd like to see on the podcast, or recommend them, because that gives me scope to say that people want to hear from them. So thanks for coming down again. And we'll
IntelligentMembranes.com. Check out all the passive purple products, and our waterproof products, and our protection products.
And the first 2 people down to the Building Performance Hub get themselves a free hat.
That's it.
Thank you very much. Cheers for tuning in.
Cheers.